Pokemon Sword and Shield, the games that ruined the franchise. This was something that many fans felt during the initial release of Sword and Shield, and it didn't help that this was the first mainline Pokemon game on the Switch, with the biggest expectations since the 3D jump in X and Y. With that being said, many fans were quick to criticize almost everything about the game before it even released. Of course, the starters were not necessarily loved as much as previous sets, but the hate started based on two major things. Number one, the wild area, and number two, the lack of a national dex. The first criticism would have not been realized until the game actually came out, but people were already concerned over how this free roam area would run on the Switch, and based on the trailer alone, it did not look very good. As for the lack of a national dex, this meant that certain Pokemon would be unobtainable in these games. Admittedly, all of these criticisms influenced me to not play this game originally. I mean, if you were around during this time, it was scary to even admit you liked Pokemon at all. But recently, I've been playing through every Pokemon generation in order to find out whether or not these games are as good or as bad as people say. So far, almost every game I've played hasn't been as bad as I thought, with a few exceptions. But with Gen 8, I feel like the public consensus is largely negative regarding it. So in this video, I'm going to play through Pokemon Sword and Shield for the first time and find out whether or not it was actually good. The game begins with a man named Rose introducing us to the world of Pokemon with a battle from the champion of the region, Leon. The setting for this battle is a gigantic stadium, which you'll learn soon enough is very important for the main mechanic of this region, Dynamaxing. But while we're watching this match, our friend Hop comes into our house and explains that today is the big day, presumably the day we become Pokemon trainers. Now in these cutscenes, we learn that Hop is the little brother of Leon, which I'm assuming are very big shoes to fill. And so we leave our house and go visit the town of Wedgehurst, where Leon has arrived, and he is here to give us our very first Pokemon. Now, honestly, I really don't love the selection of Pokemon in this game specifically, especially after such a great selection in Sun and Moon. But I went ahead and picked Scorbunny because I think it's really cool how it's based off of a soccer player. And with Scorbunny on our team, we can take on Hop in the first battle of the game with his Wooloo and Grookey. After the battle, Hop takes us into somewhere called the Slumbering Weald, where apparently no one is allowed to go into, at least not without permission. And the reason, well, apparently some sort of Wooloo broke into here and he wants to save it. But a little bit into the forest, we find a very strong looking Pokemon and we can't do anything to it. But the reason is because it's probably just an illusion. Or not, who knows. But eventually we get out of here with Leon and he takes us to the professor's lab, where we meet her granddaughter, Sonia. She says that she's old friends with Leon and they were actually rivals in the gym challenge. But now she works as the assistant for her grandmother, Professor Magnolia, and she's actually not here, so we have to go to her house to let her know that we got the Pokédex. On the way there, I decided to catch two Pokemon, a Yamper and a Galarian Zigzagoon. But eventually we arrive at the professor's house and we have a little chat with Leon and her about becoming real trainers. And what I mean by this is there's a difference between us just having Pokemon and being part of the gym challenge. Just like most other Pokemon games, there are 8 gyms in this region, but here gyms are considered a sacred part of the culture and you have to be qualified enough to join, meaning you have to have an endorsement from someone who is a significant trainer already. Leon seems hesitant to give us the letters of recommendation though, so me and Hop have a battle to see if we're really worthy. This is more of the same from the first fight, except now he has a Rookidee, but that didn't change much considering how strong Scorbunny is. After the battle, Leon seems to be impressed with us and gives us our letters of endorsement, and right after we encounter something called a Wishing Star. These give us the power to Dynamax our Pokemon in certain spots of the region, but first we have to give it to the professor so they can turn it into some sort of wristband similar to Z-Rings from Sun and Moon. Equipped with these new bands, we're able to really start our journey now, and we have to head first to the wild area. So we take the train, and on the way there, we encounter a station that has a Galarian Slowpoke, so we end up catching it, but I don't even think we can evolve it into its final form unless we get the DLC, which is a long ways away. But finally, we make it to the wild area, and before we can go in, we meet up with Sonia again, and she decides to join us on our journey because, well, I guess she wants to be something more than an assistant. She then gives us this box link that allows us to use our box from anywhere, which by the way is one of the best additions to Pokemon ever. And then we enter the wild area. Now, I know a lot of people really don't like this place, and I can see why. I'm gonna be transparent. I'm playing this on an emulator with mods to enhance the visuals, and let me tell you, this still looks trash. I understand this was the first foray into open world gameplay for Pokemon, but to be honest, I think they really missed the mark here. Not to mention, the Pokemon selection is just kind of bad. Well, it's not like we have to stay here for long though, so we go into Motostoke and get a haircut. But after this, we have to go sign up for the gym challenge. The opening ceremony for the gym challenge is tomorrow, so we go stay in a hotel, but first we meet Sonia again, get some lore about the Galar region, and then meet Team Yell. Now this is supposedly the evil team of this region, but let's just say evil teams don't really exist anymore from this point on. The whole point of Team Yell is actually just to support one of the gym challengers, Marnie. Anyway, we go to sleep, and the next day it's time for the opening ceremony. Now once again we see Rose, who is apparently the chairman of the Pokemon League, and he introduces all the gym leaders except for one. Then all the gym challengers come out, and that is the end of the ceremony. After this, we have a brief chat with the chairman, and then, well, we can actually start our journey now. Well, we have one more battle with Hop, and look, just get used to battling Hop about 2 to 3 times every single town because, well, I don't know, this game just has a lot of rival battles. Anyway, on this route, we evolved our Scorbunny into a Raboot, which is a very interesting design for a Pokemon, that's for sure. But now we have to head to the next town, so we make it through this route, through this cave, but at the end we're stopped by Bede, who we saw earlier at the registration. He says he's endorsed by Chairman Rose, so he is more amazing than us. In reality though, he is not a very good trainer at the moment, as he only has a Solosis, Gothita, and Hatenna, which we quickly defeat. Now we can go to the next town, Turffield. This is where we meet Milo, the first gym leader who specializes in grass types. We also have a brief meeting with Sonia, and she's clearly trying to figure out more lore about the Galar region. But now it's time for the first gym. Now of course there are not trials like Sun and Moon, but in this game there are gym missions, and usually you have to do some sort of weird task before every gym before you can actually battle. In this case, we have to herd Wooloos. Yeah, that's pretty much it. After completing that, we are allowed to battle the gym leader Milo, and oh my god, this is electric. In this game, gym battles are treated as massive sporting events. I mean, look at this crowd. Now, in these stadiums, we have the ability to Dynamax our Pokemon. This will increase their max health and also deal insane amounts of damage, but they'll also trigger special effects like setting different types of terrain or changing the weather. The only caveat is they can only Dynamax for 3 turns, so it's probably best to save it for the end of the battle. Because of how electric these battles are in this game, I'm going to go into a little bit more depth than usual on these battles, although in this case there isn't really much to talk about. This is the first gym leader and we have such a strong type advantage, we can just one-tap everything. Milo's first Pokemon is a Gossifleur, which gets destroyed obviously, and then he sends out an Eldegoss, which Dynamaxes, so we do the same, and well, we easily defeated it. I know that might have seemed easy, but I can guarantee you getting the other gym badges will not be such an easy task. After the battle, before we leave town, I wanted to go get a Milcery because I really want an Alcremie. It's been one of my favorite Pokemon for a while, and I've never actually been able to get it in any game yet. But after leaving town, we encounter Team Yell again, being annoying, I guess, and this guy gives us a Rotom bike, which is very, very fun, but the only issue is there's no bike theme in this game, which is kind of sad. But across this bridge, we find Hop again, and guess what? Yes, he wants to battle us. This time, his team is pretty much the same, except he evolved his Pokemon. He now has a Corvisquire and a Thwackey along with his Wooloo, although they are not very difficult for our Raboot. After the battle, we make it to the next town, Hulbury, and have a conversation with the chairman before going to find the gym leader, Nessa. Now this gym challenge is very similar to the ones you would see in almost every other Pokemon game, where you have a bunch of puzzles and the occasional trainer. Now I have to say, going into this fight, I was a little bit concerned because Nessa is a water type gym leader, and well, we have a fire type starter. I still do have a Yamper for the electric type moves, but I just just don't think that it'll be strong enough to defeat her, but hey, we'll try anyway. Nessa's first Pokemon, Goldeen, is already proving to be an issue as it takes out our Reboot, and it also does an incredible amount of damage to our Yamper, leaving us in a pretty bad spot to win this fight. Her next Pokemon is Aerocuda, and I felt like I had to Dynamax in order to defeat it, and even though we did one-shot it, her next Pokemon is Dreadnought, and that ended up sweeping our entire team. So I decided we need to train up our team in order to defeat her. And while we were doing this, we evolved Zigzagoon into Lanoon, but to be honest, I don't think that this Pokemon will be very useful in our run. But with our team a little bit stronger, we're able to go back into the Nessa fight and actually stand a chance. This time, I made sure not to Dynamax too early into the fight, so at the end, we could two-shot the Dreadnought. Now with Nessa defeated, we can get our second gym badge and continue on the gym challenge. But before continuing, I really want to evolve our Milcery into an Alcremie because, well, it's not very useful in this state. So we head back to Motostoke and go into this cafe where we can battle the cashier and he'll give us a strawberry sweet. Now if we give this to Milcery and then do a spin, it will evolve into an Alcremie. Now back at Hulberry, we go into this restaurant and find Chairman Rose, his assistant, and Sonia in here. So we sit down and have a dinner. Now we don't talk about much here except that Dynamaxing is only possible in certain spots in the world, but that's something I feel like I already knew. But after a brief talk, everyone leaves and we go outside where we find Hop, who is preparing to go to the next gym leader. But to get there, we have to go through this mine. Now as soon as we get inside, we are challenged to a battle by Bede. This time around, his team is basically the same, except now he has a Galarian Ponyta, which I really do like, although it's not very great right now. Perhaps when he starts evolving his Pokemon, he will be a little bit better. Speaking of which, our Yamper actually evolved into a Boltund after this fight, so I guess that's good for having a better team, but to be honest, I like the design of Yamper a lot more. But with Boltund on our team, we can make it through this cave and eventually run into Team Yell, in which we battle with Hop. We also meet Kabu here, who is the next gym leader we've been hearing about, and he tells us to head back to Motostoke where we can challenge him for our gym battle. Now back in the city, we head to the hotel to rest up before the battle, but Marnie wants to battle with us first. Now her team consists of a Croagunk, Scraggy, and Morpeko, but to be honest, this fight is not very difficult, especially with Alcremie on our team, who is a fairy type, and well, you can see the types of her team. Now with her defeated, we can start our next gym challenge. So this one is actually one of my favorites. Now the main goal of this gym is to catch Pokemon, but it is not as easy as it seems. See, there are a couple different trainers here who do different things in order to sabotage you from catching these Pokemon. Whether that's inflicting status effects or damaging the other Pokemon before you can catch it, there are plenty of ways that you can get messed up if you don't pay attention. But we're not here for this, we are here for the gym battle. So we walk out, very respectfully with Kabu I might say, and we start our next gym battle. Now going into this, I knew that he was going to be a bit of a challenge, but his team is actually a little bit better than I expected. His first Pokemon is Ninetales, which is pretty good offensively, but especially defensively as well. But not only this, it can inflict burn with Will-O-Wisp. And even though we are able to take it down after a few hits, his team only gets better as he sends out an Arcanine at level 25. Now even though Arcanine doesn't have the best moveset until he's in his late 30s in terms of levels, it still is annoying to deal with because it does burn and it also hits pretty hard. In this fight I really had to use my team to its fullest, including some of the random Pokemon I've caught along the way. But we eventually take it down, and unfortunately that is going to be the end of our run because this G-Max Centiskorch is absolutely monstrous against our team. So unfortunately we can't beat this in the state we're at. So I decided I'm gonna call for backup. Now I gotta admit, the Pokemon selection in this wild area so far has not been great, but I knew that there was one Pokemon that's been in every single other game that's such a reliable pick against fire types, and that is Magikarp, or rather Gyarados when you evolve Magikarp. Now with our new member of the team, we are able to actually compete against Kabu. Most of this fight went pretty much the same except for the end. We ended up in a Dynamax battle and our Gyarados did hit it with a Max Geyser and it somehow survived. Regardless, it simply could not do enough damage to our Gyarados to even come close to beating us, and we obtain the third gym badge. But now we have a long way to go to get to the next gym, so let's begin. First, we see the gym leaders we've defeated so far and they send us off, and we headed to the wild area with Hop. Now out here we actually get into a bit of a scuffle with Bede and Hop, and they end up battling, so we move on ahead without them. But now for the first time I really got to explore the wild area, and I mean, it's cool. It's just a bit unimpressive considering how bad the Pokemon selection is, and also the visuals are not great. But after making a long trek, we make it into Hammerlock, and this is a very cool city, and we actually come here with Bede, but not Hop. I guess he probably lost. The chairman is also here, and he has a little conversation with Bede, and then we learn a little bit more about the Galar region and how it gets its energy for Dynamaxing and other corporate things, I guess. But after this, we find Leon in town, and we learn that yes, indeed, Bede defeated Hop in battle, and it seems that he is very unhappy about the result. Regardless, we have to keep moving on, but before we go, we have to meet the gym leader of this city, Raihan. We actually won't be battling him quite yet, but he gives us a little pep talk, and then we head on. Up ahead, we find Sonia learning more about the history of the Galar region and the legend of the Sword and Shield. Now, once we make it to Route 6, our next destination is Stow-on-Side, and to be honest, this is a very cool town. It's completely different from any other place we've been so far. But here we finally see Hop again after he was defeated by Bede, and his team is pretty different than what it usually is. Instead of starting off with Wooloo, he throws out Cramorant, and this is actually a pretty cool Pokemon, but we don't really get to see much of its ability because, well, it got one shot. Next is Silicobra, who is not really that impressive, honestly. It did survive 1 or 2 hits, but it's nothing that great. And honestly, I'm starting to get kind of disappointed because after that loss, I really thought he would switch it up and make his team a lot better, but this is just a different kind of bad as well. He throws out Toxel, and it's just not very impressive at all. And of course, as his last Pokemon, it's Thwackey, and I guess this is his strongest Pokemon, but I mean, it's not that great either. After the battle, we talk to one of the other gym leaders, Opal, and she gives us the card for Alistair, who is our next gym leader. This gym challenge kind of sucks. Honestly, there's not really anything that significant in terms of skill-based challenge. You just kind of ride this thing down and battle a few trainers, and then it's time for the real fight. Now, as we're walking to this fight, I want to make it clear that if you are playing Pokemon Sword, you will fight Bee, and if you're playing Pokemon Shield like we are, you'll fight Alistair. Bee is a fighting type gym leader, and honestly, I prefer her design a lot more to Alistair's, but hey, that's what we're playing. Alistair is a ghost type gym leader, and he seems to be a little kid who likes to wear this strange mask. Speaking of which, his first Pokemon is Galarian Yamask, who is obviously not that strong right now. I kinda wish they gave him the evolution of Yamask, but hey, that's just how it is. But Alistair's next Pokemon is a very cool one, and that is Mimikyu. With Mimikyu's ability to disguise, it's able to take a hit for absolute free, and it can get an attack off while this is happening. Unfortunately, we are just too strong for the Mimikyu, and it does not really have an advantage over our team right now. Honestly, I think this is mostly a moveset issue because it is able to take a couple hits, but it just can't really do anything to our Boltund. And at this point, I'm feeling pretty confident because Boltund does know Crunch, which is a dark type move, which is super effective against ghost types. Now, his next Pokemon is Cursula, and I was kind of scared because I didn't really know what this Pokemon could do, so I paralyzed it, but then I realized, oh, it just goes down to 1 Crunch. So, yeah. Now, finally, we get to see one of the coolest Dynamaxes, or actually, in this case, Gigantamaxes, Gigantamax Gengar. Now, this form completely changes the appearance and health of a Pokemon, but it also gives them access to a unique move for their transformation. In this case, it would be G-Max Terror, but he doesn't actually use it. He uses Max Ooze, which is the poison type move, and well, it gets 2-shot. Well, that was disappointing for him, but more disappointing for us, because I feel like that was a little too easy. Regardless, we get our 4th gym badge and evolve Raboot into Cinderace. After we leave the gym, we immediately talk to Sonia and head to the ruins, which is being attacked by Bede. So of course, we have to stop him, and while his team is a little bit different with some new evolutions like Duosion, it's still not that great, and honestly, our Cinderace and Gyarados clean his team up very easily. After the battle, the chairman pulls up and tells Bede that his endorsement endorsement for the gym challenge is being revoked because, well, he's not being a great person. Honestly, it feels like a bit of a setup though, because Bede was just trying to get wishing stars for the chairman, and this is kind of what he thought was the right thing to do by destroying this ruin. Well, after this, we see that the attacks on the ruin do indeed break down the wall, and it reveals some very interesting lore for Sonia. With this, we learn about the presence of potentially the legendary Pokemon that we saw at the start of the game. In this region, there's a tale about an old calamity that happened, and it was saved by a sword and a shield, but it's never indicated whether that was a person or a Pokemon. But here, we can tell that it clearly was two Pokemon. But with all that completed, we can head to the next route, the Glimwood Tangle. Now this is one of my favorite routes in any Pokemon game because the atmosphere and Pokemon selection are just so good. In fact, I decided to get a new party member for our team called Sinistea, and I really like this Pokemon. But making it through this forest rewards us with one of the coolest towns in Pokemon history, Ballonly. There is such a mystical and cottagecore type of vibe in this town, and it's really sad how small it is, but at least there is a gym for us to battle here. This is a fairy type gym, and in the challenge you will have to battle a couple trainers while Opal asks you some questions. Each question that you get right will give you a buff during battle, so you want to make sure to get all of them correct. With these few warm-up battles in the books, we can actually battle her, and her team is very good on paper, but in reality it's not that great. Also, I should add, in between every Pokemon she has, she will ask you a question that will give you a buff if you get it right. Anyway, she starts off with Weezing in the Galarian form, and this thing is actually a very good Pokemon. But somehow, despite having a 120 defense stat and going neutral against fire type moves, it gets one-shot by a Pyro Ball. And her next Pokemon, Togekiss, despite also having good defensive stats, gets completely destroyed by Cinderace once again. Next is Mawile, which, yes, as a steel type, gets completely erased off the planet by Cinderace, so you can just guess that this fight is basically over. And finally, her last Pokemon is Alcremie in a Gigantamax form, which is really cool. Unfortunately, these forms are exclusive to the DLC, so sadly our Alcremie will not be doing this anytime soon. Regardless, it gets one shot by Cinderace. And with that, we win the battle and get our 5th gym badge. After the fight, Opal agrees to take us to Hammerlock once again, and we actually run into Bede here, who she deems to be the replacement for her gym, which is kinda crazy, but hey, at least he's a trainer again. Now right up ahead we find Sonia, but before we can really say much, there's a loud boom in the city, so Sonia and Leon go on to investigate while we go to Sirchester to get our next gym badge. And actually right before we leave, we run into Hop and leave for Route 7 together. Well, not without a battle, of course. This time his team is significantly different once again. He leads off with Trevenant, which is an unfortunate first Pokemon to have against ours. Then he has Boltund, Snorlax, Heatmor, and Rillaboom. And well, his whole team basically got one shot either because of type disadvantage or that they're just kind of weak, except for Snorlax because, well, he's Snorlax. At this point, I'm just starting to wonder if having Cinderace is the reason we're beating this guy so easily, or if his teams are actually that bad. Alright, this next route is going to be a long and arduous one, as we have to navigate these ruins and battle a lot of strong trainers. It's kind of funny though, our destination looks nothing like this route we're on, because once we make it to Sirchester, it's clear that this is a winter wonderland. But before taking on the gym here, I wanted to explore the town a bit and actually change my outfit because it's been a while since I've done that. I mean, it's not like it's my fault, bro, the outfits suck. Alright, this next gym challenge is a ice type themed gym, and it is a little bit annoying with its challenge at first. You have to navigate this maze, but it has different pitfalls that you need to detect using this piece of technology they gave you. Now, I'm not gonna lie, this kind of took a long time, and it increasingly gets difficult over time, so yeah, I was here for a while, but eventually I made it through, and now it's time to battle Melanie, the ice type gym leader. Alright, whatever you're thinking is gonna happen in this battle is exactly what's going to happen in this battle. She starts off with Frostmoth, and yes, it does get one shot by Cinderace, and then she throws out Darmanitan in the Galarian form, and yeah, it also gets one shot. Next, she has Ice-Q, who has an an ability similar to Mimikyu where it can take a hit for free, but it's still a pure ice type, so it gets 2-shot. Alright, now her last Pokemon is Lapras, which has a Gigantamax form, and I wanted to mix it up and use someone else except for Cinderace, so I sent out Boltund. I pretty much only used it to paralyze him though, and then I decided to just send Cinderace out and win the fight. Yeah, I mean, I really wish I had better things to say about these battles, but they are genuinely that easy. And with that, we get our next gym badge, but we have a long way to go to get to the next one. But first, we run into Hop and Sonia in a nearby restaurant, and Sonia tells us how things are going, and then we go visit this hero's bath landmark. And then, of course, we have a battle with Hop, and this time his team is quite different, actually. But maybe it's not for the better, because Cinderace 1 or 2 tapped every single one of his Pokemon. Like, he brought back his Dubwool and his Corviknight, but they only hurt him, honestly. He also has this Pokemon called Pinkerchin, which is not great either, so let's just head out of town now. First, we make it through this regular snowy route, and then we reach Sirchester Bay, which we have to upgrade our bike to surf on this water in order to make it through. And finally, on this last route, we see that we have to enter a city called Spikemuth to get our next gym badge, but the only problem is, well, it's closed. Fortunately though, Marnie appears and tells us that she was born in this city, so she knows another way to get in. But first, we need to battle her. Now this time around, her team consists of Leopard, Toxicroak, Scrafty, and Morpeko, but to be honest, every single one of them is a Cinderace victim. So with that, we can enter Spikemuth, and actually this is a unique gym because this whole town is the gym. Basically meaning that the gym challenge is actually just us battling a bunch of Team Yell members. And at the end of it, we can face the gym leader, Piers. Now this is the older brother of Marnie, and he has a unique rule for his gym: no Dynamaxing. Now the reason for this, number one, is that this city just doesn't have a power spot that you need to Dynamax, but I feel like it's also a political statement as well, because Dynamaxing is very corporate and mainstream, and well, these guys, they just seem to be really against that. Now for this gym battle, we started off with Cinderace once again, and he threw out Scrafty, who of course was destroyed by him. But this time, I felt like switching it up and using Alcremie to battle. The reason I chose this guy is, well, because Fairy type is strong against Dark types, and all of the remaining Pokemon are Dark. Not to mention, Alcremie has a pretty good moveset, being able to heal with Draining Kiss and deal a ton of damage with Dazzling Gleam. And with just this Alcremie, we were able to take down his Malamar, Skuntank, and Obstagoon, getting us the Dark type gym badge. Now, right as we leave, we hear a huge sound once again, but we find Leon outside, and apparently he has it all covered, so nothing to worry about, I guess. Up ahead, we actually find Hop here and discuss the situation, but by now, Leon had already handled the issue, which was a randomly Dynamaxed Pokemon. Kinda random, but hey, I guess it's handled now. Well, now it's time to prepare for the last gym leader, Raihan, and to be honest, I'm pretty scared because, well, Leon said that he's the only other trainer he'd consider a rival. Now, if you forgot that I have a Sinistea, I don't blame you because it's barely been used, but yes, I decided to finally evolve it. I actually didn't know that you had to evolve it with a certain item from earlier in the game. Actually, you could get this item even before catching this Pokemon. Yeah, my bad, guys. Well, now we have a Poltegeist, so that's good. I also wanted to try and get the last member of our team, which I wanted to be Dragapult, but then I realized you can't actually catch this Pokemon until a certain point in the game. Yeah, you can battle it in the wild area, but you can't catch it. The game just won't let you. This is a new feature they added in this game, I guess to limit you on the wild area Pokemon, but dude, come on. It's such a shame too, because Dragapult would have been so helpful in this upcoming gym, which you'll see why very soon. But for now, let's just head back to Hammerlock and talk with Sonia, Leon, Hop, and even Professor Magnolia about what just happened. And after talking, we start the 8th and final gym challenge. Now, this gym is my personal favorite because it feels like the difficulty got turned up a lot, because this is a double battle themed gym. And as someone who's been getting into Pokemon VGC recently, this seemed very, very interesting for me. This gym challenge doesn't have any special mini games or anything, it's just double battles with different trainers, but it's really fun regardless because you do have to use your brain a little bit, which is a new thing for this game so far. And then, the gym leader. This guy is easily the hardest gym leader we have faced so far, and it's not close. So for some reason, I thought this wasn't going to be a double battle. Like, I thought the theme of the gym was double battles just for the beginning trainers and not the gym leader. In hindsight, maybe I should have prepared better. The first two Pokemon he sends out is Gigalith and Flygon, and yeah, the moment I saw this, I knew I was cooked. Cause even though I have Gyarados, well, guess what? Flygon has Thunder Punch, which completely tears up my plan. Honestly, I used a lot of potions in this battle, which I haven't really needed this entire journey, so I'm kind of embarrassed, honestly. If I didn't use any items, I would have surely been defeated many times over. His last two Pokemon are Sandaconda and Duraludon, who has a Gigantamax form, and these guys are very strong and bulky. This battle was definitely one of the strongest in the entire game, if not the hardest for me, because I just wasn't fully prepared for this team. It's not even that I didn't have the Pokemon or coverage for it, because I did. I just wasn't really prepared mentally for it. But hey, regardless, after a lot of potions and Dynamaxing Cinderace, we are able to defeat him. When we go outside, we see Sonia and the professor having a conversation, and apparently Sonia gets promoted to professor of the region. This might be one of the most severe cases of nepotism that I've seen in Pokemon. Alright, now that we have every gym badge, we can finally get the Dracloak that I was trying to catch earlier. And this team you see now is our final team, so all we have to do is evolve Dracloak into Dragapult and we're good to go. But now we're gonna hop on a train with Hop to the final city in our gym challenge, Wyndon. Here we can hopefully defeat Leon and become the champion ourselves. But of course, the train doesn't leave us in the middle of the city, it leaves us somewhere on the outside. Well, actually, this is kind of this game's version of a Victory Road, although it doesn't really feel like it at all. It's pretty short, and I guess the trainers are difficult, but it's definitely no Victory Road, that's for sure. But at the end of the route, we find Wyndon, and this city is absolutely massive. There's a lot to see here, but right now we really only have one goal, and that's to complete the gym challenge, so that's where we go. Now, unlike every other Pokemon game, this is kind of like the anime in terms of an actual tournament deciding the champion. First, once you've collected 8 gym badges, you compete in a semifinals tournament with all of the other gym competitors. And well, our first battle in this tournament will be against Marnie. Now, her team is basically exactly the same with the addition of one extra Pokemon. She has a Leopard, Toxicroak, Scrafty, and Morpeko, and then finally a Grimmsnarl which can Gigantamax. And well, this fight panned out in the same way as last time, to be honest. It was just Cinderace and Alcremie running the show, and we easily defeated her. Alright, now we have to battle Hop, and unfortunately his team is the exact same as the one we destroyed in Circhester. And well, the battle went just about the same, honestly. I destroyed everything with Cinderace. I mean, I tried to give my other Pokemon a chance to shine, but it was just like, why would I even bother if I could just one-tap everything with Cinderace? Well, as disappointing as that battle was, we go back to the hotel to celebrate with Hop. But after waiting for a few hours, we noticed that Leon never showed up even though he invited us to dinner. But then Piers, the Spikemuth gym leader, comes to tell us that Leon was headed to Rose Tower. But right as we're leaving to go there, Oleana shows up and tells us that the chairman and Leon are in a meeting, and they really don't want us to stop it. She then tells us the only way to get to Rose Tower is to ride the monorail, which you need a special key card for, but that key card is given to a random one of her staff members, and yes, we have to battle all of them to get it. So after doing this annoying side quest for about 10 minutes, we finally get the card and head to Rose Tower. We head in with Hop and climb this very large elevator, which of course happens to have a lot of trainers for us to battle. Now, though most of these Pokemon are steel types, I decided to use Dracloak most because I wanted to level him up to get Dragapult. Oh, and Hop's Dubwool is there too, I guess. When we make it to the top of the elevator, we are battled by Oleana, who really doesn't want us to stop this meeting for some reason. I actually don't know why. Now, this team is quite interesting to fight. She starts off with Frostlass, which we are able to quickly take out with Dracloak. Then she sends out Salazzle, which actually does do quite a number on our Dracloak because it knows Dragon Pulse, but we still take it out with him. Then she has a Serena, which gets destroyed by our Cinderace. But then we quickly have to switch out because she sends out Milotic, so we go Poltegeist and hopefully can take it out with some Giga Drains, and we switch back to Dracloak so we can prepare for the last Pokemon. Her last Pokemon is Garbodor, which can Gigantamax, and I really think this design is funny. There are so many different random things inside of Garbodor's garbage pile, and it's just really funny overall. It's not any particular challenge to our team because our Dynamax Dracloak is way too strong, but I still think that these Gigantamax forms overall are really cool. If only I could actually use them. After the battle, we see the chairman and Leon having a conversation. Apparently the chairman is worried about some sort of energy crisis within 1,000 years, and he says he needs to cancel the finals in order to avert the tragedy. And then Leon's like, that is the stupidest thing I've ever heard. Why would we have to cancel something today for a problem that might happen in 1,000 years. And yeah, they kind of just don't agree and we go our separate ways. Kind of feels like this whole thing was a waste of time, honestly. Well, with that, we can finally head for the final tournament so we can eventually face Leon and become the champion. But first, I wanted to grind my Dracloak into a Dragapult, and let me tell you, this thing is going to be an animal for this tournament. And with our team fully complete now, we can head for the finals, and we find out that the gym leaders that we've faced so far will be participating in this tournament. And if we win, we can face Leon. But before the tournament starts, we are challenged to a battle by Bede, who has returned as a fairy-type trainer. And I felt like this was a good battle to test the strength of our Dragapult, because his whole team is fairy-type. Now for the first turn, I decided to use Dragon Dance, which was very scary because Mawile knows play rough, but fortunately we tanked the hit and I knew we had won from here. The first reason, well, Mawile isn't a very bulky Pokemon and there's no Mega Evolution in this game, so we're easily able to take it down. And the second reason, well, all of his other Pokemon are part Psychic type, making them weak to Phantom Force, which is a Ghost type move. So one by one, I one-shot his Gardevoir, Rapidash, and even his Dynamax Hatterene. At this point, I'm thinking that if Dragapult can put that kind of performance up by himself against a fairy type team, well, I don't think anything could stop us. But with that exhibition match out the way, we can actually start the final tournament, and our first opponent is Nessa. Now going into this battle, I was looking to do the Dragon Dance technique, where I just use Dragon Dance and then one-tap everything on her team, and I mean, I guess I kind of succeeded. So her first Pokemon is Golisopod, and its ability is Emergency Exit, which allows it to switch back into the party after taking half HP. While this sounds like a cool ability, it's actually pretty bad, and it does not do anything to help her here. So yeah, I did my Dragon Dance and then begun the destruction of her team. The other members of her team are Pelipper, Barraskewda, Seaking, and Dreadnought, but in between each of them, Golisopod would occasionally say hi, get hit for half HP, leave, come back, do the same thing, and then eventually it just went down. And then she had her final Pokemon, Dreadnought, which got destroyed. Alright, well, for the first of the finals, this was pretty easy. Actually, we only used Dragapult here. And, well, our next battle is Alistair. And, how do I put this? This battle was somehow easier than the last. So Alistair starts off with Dusknoir, and he decided to use Rock Tomb instead of Shadow Punch, even though Shadow Punch would have been super effective on my Dragapult. So I did a Dragon Dance, and then I did another one, and another one, and another one. And well, if you get more than one Dragon Dance off in this game, you probably just sweep everything. Yeah, safe to say not a single one of his Pokemon was going to survive a hit. You know, at this point, I'm starting to wonder, like, should I go back and just do it with the rest of my team? But I was already this far, and I don't know. I actually like Dragapult. You know, going through this game, I really didn't know what was in store for me, but I didn't know that Dragapult was this good. And with that, we only have one more battle left before we can face Leon, and it's a rematch with Raihan. Now, this time around, he is using a team designed for solo battles, and he actually has a pretty good mix of Mons here. Interestingly enough, he starts off with Torkoal, which is a pure fire type, but regardless, he has a pretty good moveset on it, and he even tries to put me asleep. Although I definitely could have took this guy out faster, I really wanted to make sure nobody fell asleep so I didn't have to waste any turns. It was also kind of tricky because since Torkoal knows Yawn, it would be kind of hard to set up Dragon Dance safely. After we took down Torkoal, we had to go against Turtonator, and again, this guy doesn't really do much damage, but he has a little bit of bulk to him, so it was kind of weird to play around. Despite not really getting Dragon Dance set up, we were still able to use Dragapult to take down his Goodra and Flygon. His last Pokemon is the Gigantamax Duraludon that we faced in the double battles, and to be honest, this is a little bit easier this time. It's still super strong, but after Dynamaxing Cinderace and throwing out Dragapult for the final hit, we are able to finally qualify to challenge champion Leon. But right as we're about to begin our fight, we see an announcement from the chairman saying that he is going to bring about the Darkest Day. Now once we heard this, we immediately talked to Hop and decided to head to the Slumbering Weald because maybe there was the legendary Pokemon who is rumored to have stopped the Darkest Day in the past. Now, we make it through, but at the end, we only really find a rusted sword and shield, so we take each of them and then head to Hammerlock to hopefully stop whatever's going on. When we get here, we're actually asked by Oleana to stop Mr. Rose, which is kind of crazy considering that's her boss. So we head into the underground power plant here and find him game, where he tells us that he's been feeding these wishing stars to the legendary Pokemon Eternatus. His goal is to simply provide the region with limitless energy. But what is the point of limitless energy if everything is just going to be destroyed by trying to get it? Well, regardless of what we believe, it's time to battle him, and his team is horribly made. So at first I was just gonna do the Dragapult strategy, but then I realized, well, his whole team is Steel type, which guess what, is weak to Cinderace. Yeah, this fight was absolutely pathetic. Well, apparently after we beat him, he actually doesn't really have any plan to stop us, so we just go on to fight Eternatus. Now, as cool and scary as this boss looks, he is almost entirely scripted. First, we battle Eternatus in its normal form, and eventually defeat it with relative ease, but afterwards, it Gigantamaxes itself, or I guess Eternamaxes itself, and becomes this thing. And yeah, the classic JRPG trope of your attacks doing nothing to the final boss for a while is here, and I mean, it's okay, but this is such an outdated trope, I don't know why they even did this. But after not being able to attack for a while, we figured that we could finally bring out the legendary Pokemon, and that's what they do. Zacian and Zamazenta appear, and they help to fight against Eternatus. This battle does take the form of a raid boss, but realistically, the two legendary Pokemon do put in most of the work. And once we get the health bar to 0, we can catch Eternatus, and well, now we can go back to fight Leon. Going into this battle, Leon has been hyped up by everyone who's ever mentioned his name, and I'm thinking that he might be the strongest trainer I've ever faced in Pokemon. But there's only one way to find out, and that's by battling him. So his first Pokemon is Aegislash, and let me tell you, this guy caught me by surprise. I forgot that Aegislash was part Ghost type and it knows Shadow Ball, and it also outsped my Dragapult, one-shotting it with its Shadow Ball. We then sent out Cinderace to hopefully defeat it with Pyro Ball, but its first attempt was blocked by King Shield. However, after another try, we got it down. He then sent out Haxorus, and I also sent out Alcremie, hopefully to get the type advantage over him, but he one-shot me with Iron Tail. I swapped into Gyarados to hopefully revive my Dragapult because we are going to need him very soon. But as a result, I sacrificed my Gyarados' life. But at this point, I could send out Dragapult and begin sending out the Dragon Dart attacks. Fortunately, we were able to take down Haxorus with one move. He then sent out his own Dragapult, which was the same level as ours, so it's just up to who has the higher speed stat, and yep, it was ours. Also, he doesn't have Dragon Darts on his Dragapult. He has Dragon Breath as his only Dragon type move. Also on this Pokemon was Shadow Ball, Flamethrower, and Thunderbolt, so I really think that this was designed to have very good coverage, and honestly, the same thing goes for his entire team. Alright, next up, he sends out Inteleon, and this is actually the starter that me and Hop didn't choose, which is a really cool detail, showing that Leon really does care for Pokemon. I also gotta say, I hate the design of Inteleon. I think this is one of the worst starters in history. So yeah, we send out Boltund and use Wild Charge, one-shotting it. But next up is Mr. Rhyme, who thankfully goes down in one shot to a Phantom Force. And now, down to his last Pokemon, he sends out Charizard, and he Gigantamaxes it. This thing is an absolute beast. I started off with Dragapult using Dragon Darts, but it doesn't really do that much damage, and we get hit with a very powerful Max Rock Fall that almost takes us down. I then decided to Dynamax my Dragapult to see if I could take it out with one Dragon type move, but it just doesn't do enough and he takes us down. But even though he got rid of our strongest Pokemon, he himself was one shot and he loses to his own Sandstorm. In a dramatic finish, we become the new champion. Even though we came out on top, it was certainly one of the most exhilarating battles I've ever had in Pokemon, and honestly, it might just be my favorite champion battle ever. But that's not the end of our journey, we still have some unfinished business. When we get back home, we find Hop in the Slumbering Weald, and he challenges us to a battle. His team is just as bad as it always is, with no one really that different, just Pokemon we've seen and destroyed before. After the battle, Sonia shows up, and apparently she's become an author, which is great for her, but what we're here for is to return our legendary Sword and Shield back to where we found them, and well, this is where the worst post-game ever starts. Okay, maybe it's not that bad. bad. But so there's these two characters called Swordward and Shieldbert. Yeah, I know. But apparently they say that they're a part of the royal lineage and that they're the new kings of Galar. But to be honest, I don't think anyone's taking them seriously. However, they feel like they are the rightful owners of these sword and shield artifacts. Now, they do challenge you to a battle, but I mean, I don't really care. Like, their team isn't terrible, but they're certainly not great, and it doesn't help that I have to look at how goofy they are in the background. So even though we defeat our guy, Hop of course loses because he just sucks, and well, they get away with his artifact. After this, we meet Sonia back in her lab and meet her new assistant, but apparently across the region, there's been Dynamaxing Pokemon randomly in the gyms. So, of course, we have to stop it. I don't really want to waste your time with this. There are just raid battles at every single gym, and it's not really entertaining to talk about because they mostly all get one shot. About halfway through clearing out all the gyms, we head back to Sonia's lab though, and find her assistant has betrayed her and even brought Swordward and Shieldbert to be annoying. This time it's a double battle, but they use the same team that they fought originally with, and yeah, it's not that bad. Once again though, Hop is literally the worst rival ever, and he's just there to take hits. But after this, we go back to handling the Dynamax Pokemon issue, but at Bede's gym, he already took care of the issue and just battles us instead. He just uses the same team as before, so it's nothing new. Alright, now what seconds for you was an hour and a half for me, and now we've cleared out all the gyms, and while we're still at the Hammerlock gym, we speak to Sonia and find out that these guys have entered the energy plant. In here, we find Shieldbert again, and we have a battle, but it's of course the same thing as it's always been. But after the battle, we head up to the top of the tower and find that, well, they've summoned the legendary Pokemon Zacian. We end up getting in a battle with this thing, and I gotta be honest, I lost this fight pretty badly. Honestly, I was just kind of stupid with the Pokemon and the order I sent out, so I tried again and I beat it with very little issue. But after the fight, Zamazenta appears, and we get a chance to catch the legendary our game is based on. I'm pretty sure this fight has boosted catch rates because we only needed to get Zamazenta down to about half HP before we could catch him. And with that, our journey is almost done. We head back to the Slumbering Weald and find that Hop has caught Zacian, and he challenges us to one final battle. His team is exactly the same, of course, except now he has Zacian, and let me tell you, this was the only reason why this battle was hard at all. He almost destroyed my entire team, so I had to use some items and revives to win this battle, but yeah, Zacian is very strong, and I didn't really feel like using Zamazenta in this fight. And with that last battle with Hop over, Leon comes to congratulate us, and the game is over. At least, unless you want to buy DLC. After completing the main storyline of Pokemon Sword and Shield, I found myself really surprised at how much fun I actually had. However, many of the initial criticisms about the game were absolutely right. First of all, wow, these starters kind of suck. Not necessarily in terms of battling, in fact quite the opposite in that case, but dude, these designs are unsettling, especially in Teleon. This is such a shame considering how great the starters in Sun and Moon were. As for the wild area issues, those are definitely present as well. Again, I played this game on an emulator with performance mods, so my experience is probably a little bit better than most, but still, no mods would fix how ugly this place looks, especially when it rains. Going with the ugliness of the wild area, the selection of Pokemon here is genuinely horrible until the very end of the game. I think of previous games like Pokemon Black and White 2, which had a great Pokemon selection throughout the entirety of the experience, and I wish Sword and Shield got a similar treatment. And for the National Dex issue, I did not personally find much of an issue with it, as I was able to create a team I was very happy with. But for those who are fans of some of the mons who were left out, I'm sure this was very disappointing. And of course, for the people who like to collect every Pokemon, this is also pretty hard to see. I will say they added many Pokemon back in the DLCs, but that's just the thing, you have to pay for these Pokemon. In a way, it feels like they left them out so you would have to pay for them later on purpose, even if they could have just added them to the regular game. That being said, those were my major issues with the game. Now I want to talk about the general experience of playing it. For me, this journey felt like the focus was on battling. I mean, the whole plot of the game revolves around you and Hop being exclusive members of this gym challenge, which is probably akin to the real-world Premier League in terms of popularity. Battles take place in massive stadiums with hundreds of people cheering you on. Pokemon are even able to transform into these giant beasts, making for some epic moments. Now I will say, as cool as these moments are, I think that this game game has a bit of a difficulty issue. Perhaps this is an issue with Cinderace especially, but I feel like I was able to blitz through most battles after the first 3 gyms with relative ease. The countless battles with Hop did not remotely challenge me once, and the same thing goes for Bede and Marnie. While certain fights such as the double battle with Raihan and the champion fight with Leon proved to be difficult challenges, I think back on experiences in Pokemon Emerald and Ultra Sun, and comparatively, these battles don't really compare at all in terms of difficulty. This is one of the most subjective parts of Pokemon, so I can't say this is a plus or minus, but to me, I just wish that the teams of these gym leaders brought a little bit more to the table. In my opinion, this game has the greatest battles in the series, especially combined with the amazing gym battle music, so I feel like it should have the most challenging battles as well. Now, for the region design, I think since Pokemon has gone international with its regions, we've gotten to see a lot of amazing takes on real-life locations. Understandably though, they do have to give some unique designs to cities and towns, or else certain games would just look like this. In Sword and Shield, we explore a region based on the inverted United Kingdom. Our journey starts in Scotland and ends in London. As someone who has recently started traveling more, it was really cool to see the rustic and old-fashioned architecture of the UK highlighted in different ways. Additionally, it was interesting to see a much more whimsical location like Ballonlea tucked away in the middle of the journey. If I did have some criticism though, I wish the wild area was a bit more aesthetic, as it definitely had an incredible amount of potential. Also, I feel like there was a bit too much reliance on similar theming throughout the region. In previous regions, not one town felt that similar, with each offering unique culture and atmosphere. In Galar, I think there are a bit too many places that rely on the same style of repetitive industrial buildings or snowy environment. Now, for the character design, I have to say I'm impressed. Seeing how great Sun and Moon's characters were, I'm glad to say that this trend has stayed consistent into Gen 8. Every side character feels important to the world in one way or another. Even if they didn't have a central role in the story, they felt relevant to their respective town or city. Marnie, for example, is cheered on throughout the game by Team Yell, because her and her older brother are basically their last hope in supporting their hometown. Bede is a character that seems like a terrible person, but in reality was just a kid without a family who was influenced by an evil billionaire oligarch in Rose. Hop goes through a whole character arc about being in the shadow of probably the strongest trainer in the world who has never been defeated. Throughout the game, he struggles finding his own identity for himself and his team. Eventually, he battles Bede, and when he loses, it really hurt his spirit. This led to him switching his entire squad up multiple times and challenging us again and again to test his skills. But slowly, he learns to stop trying to live up to Leon so much and focus on his own journey instead. Overall, every character involved in the gym challenge feels connected. Even Raihan, who is the strongest gym leader, states that he himself is on a journey to eventually defeat Leon, just like us. And this is backed up by him being the second strongest trainer in the region. As for the visual designs though, I love how all of these characters look. Ironically, the main character is the design I hate the most. I don't understand why the outfit selection in this game is so bad when Sun and Moon had quite strong options. But finally, let's talk about the music. To me, this game has an incredible soundtrack, with the only issue being the town themes are not really that memorable. Don't get me wrong, I think the battle themes are some of the best in the series, and overall, the music is very good. But in terms of the town tracks especially, I can't remember what any of them sound like specifically. This is probably just an issue that's a product of the game being more open, which sometimes calls for a more atmospheric soundtrack instead of one filled with hooks and catchy phrasing. So overall, was Pokemon Sword and Shield actually good? Well, I think so, but I have to say this was certainly the major turning point in the downfall of Game Freak's reputation as a game developer. Did this reflect in the sales of the game? No. Actually, this is one of the best-selling Pokemon games ever. But as a culture and as a fan of the games, this release made it really hard to be a fan of the series. There was a mix of people blindly hating and people being genuinely and rightfully upset, which only amounted to more negativity online. So while I really did have a fun time playing through Sword and Shield, I hate how much it promoted Game Freak being toxic with their decisions, which only made the community more toxic as a whole. Well, with this game complete, I can now move on to... maybe let's just play the DLC for this game after all.